Sunday, June 17th, 1928. Dear Wendy, my little girl, you'll probably never read this letter, but I hope that you are safe. The red tide comes.
Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper Vase Odin, and today we'll be talking about Wendy Adams, the urchin. The year was 1917. Penelope opened a care package from her Aunt Yeti and found a strange amulet enclosed within the contents of the package. The letter from her aunt described it as an old family heirloom, a promise made long ago to protect her family from undue harm. Penelope was happy to hear from her family, being all alone as her husband was out to sea. She was also with child, which further intensified her emotions. She didn't know much else about her family history, but it was clear in the letter that the firstborn girl from each generation in her family was to be given the amulet as a birthright. When she had Wendy a few months later, Penelope immediately knew that the amulet would one day be passed on to her. The years went by, and Wendy was a happy child. She loved her father and mother and would miss her daddy dearly whenever he would go back out to sea. Through the years, her father started becoming more and more obsessed with the strange books he found while traveling. He would draw arcane symbols and utter strange words. He became withdrawn and his trips became more lengthy, until one day he just didn't come back. It was then that her mother gave her the amulet and made her promise that she would keep it safe on her person always, no matter what the circumstance. Shortly after, Wendy's mother, Penelope, began to lose all sense of reality. The good people at Arkham Asylum took Penelope to help cure her, and the good people of the local orphanage took Wendy. Wendy escaped a few times before she realized she was just better off living as a street kid. She had unbelievably good luck and managed to survive the streets of Arkham. One day, while she was emptying her collections cup, the 11-year-old found a crumpled note, handwritten and obviously purposely placed in her cup while she was out getting money. The note said, "Soon the red tide rises. Stay safe, my little girl." It seemed to have been written by her father, but she had no idea who put it there. Her eyes lit up and thoughts ran through her head about her father's return. She didn't think much about what it could mean, except for the fact that it meant her father was still alive and may return one day. In Arkham Horror, the card game, Wendy Adams is a dual-class survivor rogue, primary class being survivor. She has a 4 in willpower and agility, and a 3 in intellect, and a 1 in combat. She has a 7 in both sanity and health, and her special ability is a reaction. You can choose and discard a card from your hand to cancel a chaos token and redraw another token. Her elder sign ability is a 0, and if her amulet is in play, the elder sign is an auto success. Now, her deck building requirements are a deck size of 30, with survivor and neutral cards level 0 to 5, and rogue cards 0 to 2. And for her signature card, she gets her amulet and abandon and alone, and we'll go over those in a moment, and a random basic weakness. Now, before we go further, let's talk about her combat score of 1. Wendy's combat ability is often misunderstood by people, much like her special ability. It's true that a score of 1 makes her a difficult investigator to use in combat if you're depending on weapons, but Wendy decks, as I've found from my research, are all about combos, and can be more than capable in combat. In fact, she can be a devastating combatant against single foes, but she does falter when confronted with multiple foes. Understanding this is paramount when building a deck for her, because you can fall on your face very quickly if you don't plan ahead for dealing with those types of situations. Wendy's access to rogue cards and her high evadability can very easily trick some into building a deck based on evading foes, and you certainly can have a decent deck with that in mind, but it's the free damage cards and events from the rogue card pool that capitalize on Wendy's and some survivor cards' ability to manipulate the chaos bag that really make her an effective boss killer. Now, her signature card is pretty strong, but most Wendy decks don't depend on it to be effective. A 2-cost asset, Wendy's amulet takes up your accessory slot. Alternatively, you can commit it for 2 wild icons, although that's not recommended. The card lets you play events from your discard pile as if it were in your hand. You then have to put any events you play into the bottom of your deck. So here's a good tip from someone on the Facebook group. His name is Connor Roncaioli. Don't make the mistake of thinking Wendy's amulet is for playing events twice. It's meant for you to be able to commit events for icons or pitch it for a redraw, and then use the event from the discard instead of your hand, basically getting you free stuff. The double event strategy is cumbersome, slow, and a low payoff, and this is probably the most important tip on the video. Her signature weakness is Abandon and Alone. Basically, you take 2 direct horror and remove your entire discard pile from the game. The 2 horror is kind of harsh, but more than likely it won't break your game if you plan ahead for it. The discard pile hate may or may not be harsh depending on the game state. In the little experience I've had with Wendy decks, this hasn't been terribly bad. There's far worse signature weaknesses. Now here's some great tips from the Arkham Horror Facebook group, specifically Connor Roncaioli, who gave me some amazing tips because I am not a Wendy user. So generic events are better than specific events. Lucky and Will to Survive are less likely to get stuck on top of your discard, covering everything below it, than, say, Look What I Found or Waylay. In other words, events that require a specific game state are usually going to hinder you versus more general events that can be played almost any time. Also, make use of rogue assets and skills because they're very powerful, Leo DeLuca being a very popular choice, giving you that extra action. And then pickpocketing apparently does a lot of work in this deck, and the lockpicks are amazing as well. Now for offense, you do need an offensive asset, but it's only kind of a backup plan, and you only need like 2 copies. Something like a baseball bat, although I think Fire Axe is definitely a better choice than baseball bat, but either one works great. Offensive events are usually a trap, especially the ones that require skill test. So if you fail the skill test, it leaves you defenseless, so definitely don't get those. And when you get leveled cards, Will to Survive is a must-have for this deck. It's also a hoot for role-playing when you give Wendy some liquid courage, pills, a smoking pipe, and a cigarette case. Just the thought of the 11-year-old being so reckless is a ton of fun. There's also some great Wendy decks on ArkhamDB, and I recommend you check them out if you're interested in playing Wendy. She has a very hardcore following, and even though she's initially scoffed at when the game came out, she's now almost universally admired as one of the strongest investigators when built properly. Her playstyle is definitely unique, and even though it's not my preference, playing a Wendy deck once in a while will help you learn to approach the game in a completely different manner than what you may be used to. I hope this video was helpful to you, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. Also, like, share, and subscribe. This helps others find the channel, and heck, even dislikes help others find the channel, so if you dislike it, go ahead and click that too. So I'll talk to you all very soon.
Hey Wendy, the red tide rises. I am your daddy.